Our reality. And that local reporter, a hero. And she deserves all the credit in the world. Donna S., Las Vegas, Nevada. The NHL expansion team, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, had their home opener earlier this week. As you can imagine, it was an emotional time for all. The theme was #VegasStrong, and the intro video before the game honoring the Las Vegas heroes was very touching. Let's check it out. Go.
Will come when you
a lid on it, as are the Democrats. But the fact of the matter is we have a huge problem with the top levels of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I say that with great trepidation. And I'll tell you why. I was Chief of Staff to an Attorney General. I knew at least 2 former directors of the FBI. We worked incredibly well with the FBI over at the Justice Department. It would never even have occurred to us to interfere with their activities for or against. It never would have occurred to us to interfere with an election. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? All this talk about Russia interfering with our election, which Russia sought to do, and not just our election, but elections all over the world, but they failed. The FBI also sought to interfere with our election. Mr. Comey did, Mr. McCabe did, the director, former, the current deputy, who will be out soon, as did their underlings, Mr. Stroke, Ms. Page, Raddick, Baker, and others whose names will go down in history infamously.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, Levin TV.
There's a text exchange between these 2 FBI agents, these 2 supposed to be objective, fact-centric FBI agents, saying perhaps this is the first meeting of the secret society. So, of course, I'm going to want to know what secret society are you talking about, because you're supposed to be investigating objectively the person who just won the Electoral College. So, yeah, I'm going to want to know.
Is this getting, I mean, this is shocking. You know, let's say there's no secret society, but what are they saying to each other? They want to cripple this president, an insurance policy against him, meaning them, the investigators, a secret society or whatever. I mean, this is Soviet-style stuff.
This insurance policy that was referenced in trying to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president. We learned today about information that in the immediate aftermath of his election, that there may have been a secret society of folks.
Now stop. Before you think this is a kook conspiracy thing, that's in the text. That maybe there'd be this meeting of this so-called secret society within the FBI. Now, I don't want us to run wild with this, but that is not something that he conjured up from his imagination. It's in the text. I want to emphasize something to you. There's no way in hell Barack Obama didn't know some of this. There's no way in hell Barack Obama didn't know that his Department of Justice and FBI had filed applications with the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, for counterintelligence investigation. There's no way he wasn't informed about that, either directly from the FBI, the Attorney General, or in his daily presidential briefing, his intelligence briefing. There is no way that they wouldn't have told him because of the potential that it could affect the election. We have an FBI that used a dossier, in my opinion, paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC, through this Fusion GPS operation, this CD operation. They go overseas. They use a former British spy who uses his contacts with the Kremlin to concoct this 35-page character assassination sheet. And what do they do with it? They work it into the FBI. Who brings it to the FBI? Well, Mr. Steele does, as does John McCain's people. What does the FBI do? They bite down hard on this hook. They were thinking about paying Mr. Steele, maybe even bringing him on staff for more information. And apparently they take that information and they run it to a federal court, a secret federal court, which didn't do its job, by the way. The judge or judges on this court who made this decision to issue this warrant against one or more members of Trump world did not do their job. And it's interesting to me that later, I believe it's sometime in April, a judge admonished the Justice Department and the FBI, but we still don't have all the particulars of what took place. We still don't have all the particulars, but it's getting very ugly. The texts, 50,000 texts, however many texts, an enormous number of texts missing over a 5-month period, including up to the day, give or take a day, where Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel. That just so happens? They think we just fell off the tuna boat? That's ridiculous. And what about these texts? A secret society of FBI agents? What's that all about? We need an insurance policy in case Trump wins? What's that all about? This is outrageous. I don't know that this has ever happened in American history or the history of the FBI. You know, the reason why an FBI director gets a 10-year term as FBI director is to ensure that he or she is not political or not influenced by politics. It's not because they're king or queen where they get to make decisions and influence an election. So I just want to make it abundantly clear. We talk about the Russians interfering with our election. Fair enough. They talk about collusion. There was no collusion with Trump and the Russians. But the FBI sought to interfere in our election. I'm not talking about the men and women who work at the FBI. I'm talking about the top echelon. They sought to interfere with our election, and they sought to interfere in our election in worse ways than the Russians did.
The short-lived government shutdown did not shut down GOP efforts to undermine the Russia investigation.
So stop. This is a news organization. GOP efforts to undermine the Russian investigation. If this is not a Praetorian Guard propaganda mill, I don't know what is. So now trying to figure out how the senior level of the FBI tried to interfere with the election is really an effort to derail the Russia investigation. While maybe CNN, with all its hosts, with all its guests, with all its BS, can give us one example of Donald Trump colluding with the Russians during the course of this campaign. Just one. They have none. All this is going on, this nonsense, this static, this cover-up by CNN and others, while we actually have a connection between real Russians at the Kremlin and the ex-spy Christopher Steele and his connection to Fusion GPS, which was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC, of which there's no dispute. No dispute whatsoever. No, do you know who was attending Trump's inauguration? A Russian. Oh, my God.
I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content.
Stop right there. He asked a friend of his. He didn't say, I asked a lawyer who represents me. Right? He didn't say that. He didn't say, I asked my counsel. Moreover, at that point, if he actually had counsel, he would at least make the assertion, legitimate or not, Senator, that's attorney-client privilege, and I can't get into that. But he didn't do any of those things. That shows you what a joke this is. If you had a serious, objective, legitimate special counsel, he would have taken a few months to look at this and then dropped it and said, you know what, there's no Russian collusion. That's why I was asked to take on this task. I'm going back to the private sector. Not into whether Manafort registered as a federal agent or what he did with his money 10 or 12 years ago or whatever it was. Not false statements to these guys. They claim in order to pressure them to testify against something or someone or whatever it is. There is no collusion. That should have ended it. That should have been it, but it apparently isn't.
We have exclusive breaking news on the Russia investigation. Lots of big revelations in the Russia investigation. Big news tonight on the Russia investigation. A lot of major new developments tonight in the Russia investigation.
Out in these districts, when you talk to people about Russia, and that's all we talk about at CNN.
What a joke network that has become. How about the FBI issue? The FBI issue, the FBI issue, the FBI... No, we don't care. No, CNN doesn't care if we have rogue actors at the top of the FBI. They don't care about that at all. They don't care about the texts, the missing texts, the recovered texts, the content of the texts. They don't care about any of it. But they do care that as little information as possible be made public about this silent coup.
Our understanding of this is that Andrew McCabe is stepping down and will leave the FBI immediately, though he has taken what are called terminal benefits.
All right, let's stop there. So why would he need to, we'll know more later tonight and tomorrow, so why would he need to leave immediately? Because he's had enough. He's being undermined. That's another report. Had enough being undermined? There's 3 weeks to go. What are you worried about? Well, I've had enough. After all that, I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving. If he's doing something like that, that's to position himself as the victim and to give more fodder to the left, to the Democrats, to the media. Already Eric Holder, a know-nothing, he knows nothing about what's going on, has already tweeted something that's being widely reported about, you know, how this is a very bad day. Of course, he didn't think that with Fast and Furious and all of his other abominations, but today is a very bad day.
The Michael Horowitz, he's the Inspector General at the DOJ report that's coming out at some point, and this goes into the whole thing about the text and allegations of improper behavior by many senior people at the FBI. So we don't know exactly what played into McCabe leaving today, but all of that is swirling around this case.
All of that is swirling around this case? No, all of this is swirling around the senior levels of the FBI. Jim Comey did a hell of a job, didn't he? With all these controversies and conflicts swirling around. Mr. Mueller before him did a hell of a job, didn't they? And the President of the United States is trying to clean house. Not because of Russia. There is no Russia collusion. Because he wants it cleaned up. He wants it depoliticized, if you will. And the fact of the matter is, for trying to do that, he comes under attack, which is exactly what the media want, because who are the beneficiaries of these leaks? The media. The media get the leaks. Where else do you leak? We've been hot on this trail like nobody else. And that is corruption and the politicization of the top levels of our intelligence agencies and our law enforcement, federal law enforcement agencies by the prior administration, by Jim Comey, the former director of the FBI, by McCabe, the former deputy director now of the FBI. I would argue Mueller before Comey, and on and on and on. And it's all, unfortunately, turning out to be quite accurate.
On Sunday, Republicans were split on whether they should intervene to protect Mueller's job. Senator Lindsey Graham.
I think Mr. Mueller's...
Okay, hold on. There's Goober, of course. Folks, the issue here is what's going on at the senior levels of the FBI. We have a really incredible event that took place. The number 2 was forced out by the number 1 based on information he got from the Inspector General. These are all independent men. And now we're going to Trump suggest that Mueller should be fired. What if Trump said that Mueller should be fired? How is that obstruction of justice? Does anybody believe for 2 seconds they wouldn't continue investigating?
I don't think there's a need for legislation right now to protect Mueller. So we're raising an issue that's not...
As Mr. Trump
hold on now. What would the legislation to protect Mueller say? We, the Congress, say the President of the United States can't fire a subordinate? Now, does anybody who understands the Constitution, all of you, believe that Congress has the power to say that the President of the United States can't fire a subordinate? No. You could take that all the way to the Supreme Court, and they would say, no, you can't do that. That's separation of powers, pure and simple. But as I said the other day, do you think this man is going to sign a bill and turn it into law that says he is denied power to fire Mueller? It's a different question on whether he should from a political or legal perspective. But it's a constitutional question when Congress gets involved. We're going to protect Mueller. We're going to protect Mueller. We're not going to allow his boss to fire him. The standard for recusing yourself from a criminal investigation at the Justice Department or other investigations is appearance of a conflict of interest. An appearance of a conflict of interest. Clearly, this is an appearance of a conflict of interest. Even one of the other senior officials at the FBI, you may recall, urged him to recuse himself and couldn't believe he wouldn't. So, of course, the President of the United States finds this outrageous. And he is the President. He's in charge of the executive branch. That includes the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I hate to tell the whole world this, but the FBI was created by Congress. It's in the executive branch. The President is in charge of it. It doesn't have an independent power under our Constitution. And God forbid if it did. When you have the most powerful and most important federal law enforcement agency at its highest levels conducting this kind of Soviet-style propaganda campaign, and I can't think of any other way to best describe it. Those are police state tactics, and they should concern everybody who believes in this republic, everybody who believes in due process, everybody who believes in the electoral process. This is the sort of thing that goes on in the third world. It's the sort of thing that takes place in Russia, ironically enough. The Democrats were somewhat schizophrenic, making two arguments at the same time. On the one hand, they were arguing, don't release the memo. Don't classified information. FBI says they're gravely concerned. You'll give up sources and methods. Don't release the memo. And then they were saying, the hell, nothing in the memo. I mean, they're just spin. It's Nunes doing his thing. Then the memo's released and it's, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? Lying right to the end, lying to the American people right to the end. It's incredible. There is no way that if you're going to seek and secure a FISA warrant, a probable cause that a member of Trump's team, volunteer, part-time, of no consequence. The fact is, a member of Trump's team is going to be surveilled by the United States government as an agent of Russia. That's probable cause. Agent. They need to be an agent of a foreign power. You cannot tell me that the President of the United States didn't know that. Moreover, as I said, that weekend and that March, we know the President knew some of this. How? It was in the newspapers. How? I read it to you. The Russians clearly did try to interfere with our election. They clearly did. They failed to tip the balance. But under whose eyes were the Russians interfering with our election? Barack Obama. The application does not mention Steele was ultimately working on behalf of and paid by the DNC in the Clinton campaign, or that the FBI had separately authorized payment to Steele for the same information. Stop. Now, we knew that, but this is the first, again, affirmation, unequivocal, definitive statement that that took place. So the FBI was paying Steele for the same information, or at least they were authorized to pay Steele for the same information. Now, think about that. The same opposition research. Now, we can despise the Russians as I do. You can despise Putin as I do. I've never been a code pink Republican. What happened to them, by the way? Where are they? But when it happens in our own tent, in our own country, in our own Justice Department, through the FBI, that's another story. That takes it to a level way up here. And notice the Democrat Party runs interference. Notice the Democrat Party is obstructing information. The Democrat Party was furious that texts were released so the American people would know what's going on. Just as they're trying to sit on a memo that the House Intelligence Committee has put together on some of the information that you and I should know that took place at the FBI during the course of the election. And as I said 2 days ago on my radio show and yesterday on my radio show, how is it that Barack Obama is never questioned about this? His name never comes up. Never comes up. Are you telling me that the director of the National Security Council, Susan Rice, didn't know a thing? Are you telling me that the deputy director of the National Security Council, Ben Rhodes, a well-known leaker, he didn't know a thing? Are you telling me Valerie Jarrett didn't know a thing as she sits there controlling every department and every cabinet secretary? Are you telling me that James Comey, who likes to meet with presidents and takes memos, that he didn't meet with the president or write any memos? Loretta Lynch meets with Bill Clinton on the tarmac. Now we know why she met with Bill Clinton on the tarmac. She told him, or winked and nodded to him, that his wife was in the clear. That's exactly what took place. We would not even have known of that meeting if a local camera crew in Phoenix at their airport hadn't seen them. And all the effort to cover it up. Oh, we were talking about our grandchildren. Really? Nobody believes that.
The Justice Department, for the longest time, wouldn't release any documents, any information related to the tarmac meeting. Well, if they're talking about their grandchildren, why would you release it all? Now, this is just part of the continuum. This is what's been taking place. But it didn't start today, and it didn't start yesterday. And it's nice to see now that we have committees of Congress who are concerned about this. It's nice to see now that we have radio hosts who are concerned about this. It's nice to see that we now have television hosts who are concerned about this. Where the hell were they in March? Mark, what are you talking about? Where were they in March? When I had information, pulled it together from the public accounts, and began to pull the string and to see that something didn't smell right, something didn't look right. And the media came down on me like a ton of bricks. I'm a tough guy. I can handle it. That's not my point. They wanted to shut it down, so they used ridicule, they used conspiracy theory arguments, they used right-wing stuff, all that stuff. And I had very little support in the conservative media, almost none. They were, oh, has he gone nutty over here? Has he done? No. So we kicked the door open. And now the door's open. And now people are looking. And they should look. And we need to get to the bottom of this. And if we don't get to the bottom of this, we're in a hell of a lot of trouble. Have you ever recalled a time in modern American history or the history of the FBI when the entire senior leadership has been wiped out? I was thinking about this the other day. The director of the FBI was fired by the president. He's a leaker, and he's a liar. The deputy director of the FBI, McCabe, is under criminal investigation for leaking and lying. Peter Strzok was in charge of counterintelligence investigations. He was just fired yesterday by the FBI for leaking, lying, and texting what he texted, and we don't need to go through that again. And others have been forced out. The senior level of the FBI. That's pretty damn amazing, is it not? That tells you you had, under that senior leadership, a rogue agency.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's Voice, Levin TV.
On the face of the dossier, it appears that Mr. Steele gathered much of his information from Russian government sources inside Russia. He gathered much of his information from Russians in Russia. How do the left and the media get away with still accusing Trump of colluding with the Russians, when in fact we have unequivocal, undeniable evidence that that's exactly what the Hillary Clinton campaign was doing, which is really shocking. This whole thing started with the Clinton campaign and the DNC funding Fusion GPS, which funded this ex-British spy who used these Russians, and then got the FBI, and the FBI apparently celebrated the information and used it, to go after Trump. And that's the basis of this entire thing. And they pushed it out in the media, which is why the media was talking Russia collusion, on and on and on. There's no collusion, no matter how many times we say it, no matter how many investigations take place, congressional or otherwise. It's truly, truly appalling. And Hillary Clinton sits back and acts like her fingerprints aren't on it. Her fingerprints are all over it. And Obama sits back and acts like he doesn't know a damn thing. He knows everything. For more than a year, they've had 4 FICE applications that we're aware of using the dossier as well as other FBI documents relating to Mr. Steele. So Mr. Steele is basically the core reason that these applications have been filed. Mr. Steele, who was hired by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC through Fusion GPS. So the Clinton campaign and the DNC
were able, through Mr. Steele and the Russians, to get these FISA applications filed and warrants issued. This is exactly why I said, in essence, to put it in plain English, Hillary Clinton paid for these warrants. The FBI misled a federal court. The FBI misled the FISA court with the use of this information, the way they used it. And when Mr. Rosenstein and others testified on Capitol Hill that they weren't going to mention whether the dossier was used in any of the applications before this committee got the applications, I told you that I know they used it, because it's not classified to say, no, we didn't use the dossier. Not only did they use the dossier, it was the brunt of their argument to the court, and they used it 4 times. Look at these FBI warrants and the extension of these warrants, this Carter page. As they used to say, where's the beef? Okay, you've been surveilling the man apparently for years, really, one way or another. And he was actually assisting them at one point to get the Russians. Okay, where's your case against him? You don't have a case against Trump World. You don't have a case against the Trump campaign or transition. You don't have a case against Carter Page. People have been indicted over nonsense. Absolute nonsense, having absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump, Trump World, the campaign, nothing. Zero.
This comment said, I'm going to be a professional school shooter, and I knew that I couldn't just ignore that.
He's a great patriot, a citizen patriot. He did exactly what everybody always says to do. Don't hold back. If you see something that's bad, report it, report it, report it. I even heard this yesterday. So he reported it to the FBI. And what came of it? What came of it? Maybe Trey Gowdy will look into that. I don't know. He says, I want to kill people. Yeah, let me see. Yes, quote, I want to kill people. And I can give you the Instagram accounts, and you can look at them, and you'll see the pictures. Now, stop right there. You're the FBI. Somebody's calling you. They give you their name. They tell you the name of the potential murderer. They're giving you the Instagram accounts. What the hell else do you want? That's not just see and report. That's see and give specific information. Wouldn't you have called your field office and said, get the hell over there and find out what this kid's up to? Wouldn't you? We have all these hearings about guns, all these hearings promoting gun control. I want to know exactly how the FBI handled this. I want to know how this call came in, what their call center's like, what happened from the call center, where did that call go from there, the name of the individual or the unit to whom it went, what, if anything, they did with it. That's not enough for the FBI to, well, you know, unfortunately, we didn't follow our protocols. We have 17 dead people, many of which are children. And quite frankly, and I'll say it, and I've said it earlier, this one could have been prevented, okay? Evil is evil, and you can't stop evil all the time. Trust me, I know this. And people are imperfect whether they have a uniform on or not. This one could have been stopped. It's all over the Washington Post, all over the New York Times, all over the media. They're all worked up. There was a meeting on this island, this Seychelles Island. And very scary kind of meeting. They were collaborating. They were conspiring. What were they doing in this meeting? When did this take place? All right, I'll walk you through this latest phony issue that's being leaked out by the prosecutor's office to the media. By the way, this is an old story. It's a story that goes back to August on CNN, back to September on Fox, but let's play.
The FBI is looking into the Seychelles meeting as part of the probe into alleged Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. election.
No, wait a minute. How can it be part of the probe of Russian interference in the 2016 election when the meeting took place January 11th, 2017? Do I have that right? Huh? What? Yeah? Somebody get on the FBI hotline. Get on the FBI hotline. Tell them. This doesn't make, no, they won't even bother if you call on the FBI hotline, as I recall. I'm still having trouble following what the issue is here. So there was a meeting on January 11th, 9 days before this president is inaugurated, to set up a back channel to Putin when you're going to be president in 9 days? And the guy setting it up has really no formal ties to the campaign? I still don't understand what the issue is. Does anybody understand what the issue is? Of course not. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Next piece of mud thrown against the wall, and the next one, and the next one. When the Inspector General's office of the Department of Justice steps up, and the OPR office of FBI steps up and says, we need to clean up this place, and this guy needs to be fired, it is appalling to me that the Democrats in lockstep, that the media virtually in lockstep, some miscreant Republicans are talking about poor victimized McCabe, when McCabe may well have committed a crime, but he clearly violated the rules of the FBI and the Department of Justice.
Why are they letting them steal the money? What's the angle? Well, what are they buying? They're buying laptops and tablets. If they intercept them, they do their little spy thing, and then they deliver them right into the hands of Al-Qaeda, and they create basically a dream come true.
Now, hold on right there. His point is, they knew that they were using his financial information, his Social Security number, his credit cards. They knew what they had ordered. They could have tracked them back easily to their location, meaning his location. And he's saying, they never came to help me. They had to know where I was or about where I was, but they wouldn't help me. And the FBI agent handling his case, you saw the lady earlier, told his mother that he joined Al-Qaeda, and he was on a spending spree, knowing full well that that wasn't the case and certainly wasn't likely the case. You'll recall that there were several occasions, at least a couple of occasions, where the would-be mass murderer, his son, he's the FBI informant, where the FBI was informed, we think we have a problem with this guy. You remember that? Going back to the Orlando mass killing case? And somehow, in some way, his son fell off the radar screen for the FBI. Now, I'm not saying there's conspiracy or anything shadowy. I'm saying, what the hell is going on at the FBI? I don't understand it. You're the FBI. This is your informant for 10 years. You don't call this guy in and talk to him about his son, the potential issues with his son. They even spoke to the son on one or more occasions, as I recall. I'm doing this from memory, but they even spoke to the son. And they just said, oh, okay, whatever. So, again, we have, I don't know, it's like a complete dropping of the ball in this case. In the case with the two Russians who murdered the individuals at the Boston Marathon. In the case involving Fort Hood, the FBI was notified about that nut job in advance. Obviously, the case that took place in Florida. I mean, you want to have a march. I mean, it seems to me we'd have a march questioning the competency of the central federal government when it comes to their responsibilities for keeping our communities safe. These tactics are unbelievable. When you are intercepting phone calls, when you are wiretapping the president's personal lawyer, one of them anyway, who did some work for him, his home, his office, his hotel room in early April. You may be doing that, excuse me, to try and get Cohen on a variety of issues, but you know damn well that he's the president's personal lawyer in certain matters, and you're listening to get the president. That's the big fish. And I must say, ladies and gentlemen, I have never heard of a case in which the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in any city would wiretap a president's personal lawyer. I suspect none of Clinton's personal lawyers were tapped. That is Hillary Clinton. I suspect none of Bill Clinton's personal lawyers were tapped when the investigation took place in Whitewater and related cases. I have no information that during Watergate that any of President Nixon's lawyers were surveilled, private lawyers, that is. So this is enormously troubling to me. I mean, what next? Did they plant bugs in the Oval Office, telling the president to talk into a lamp? What next? Was Jim Comey there planting bugs? Now, of course, I'm being sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek, but we're not far from this, are we? So the Obama administration knew all about Russian interference, but they didn't do a damn thing about it because they didn't want to interfere with the Hillary election. You see, the victim here is Donald Trump. The victim here is the Trump campaign. The victim here is the Trump transition team.
The victim here is all the people who are now devoured by this Mueller, this investigation and so forth, in which there's no criminal statute at the center of it, at the center of it. So where are we now? Where are we now is it's really a two-track thing. We're trying to protect our president from an unconstitutional coup d'etat, a silent coup as I call it. That's the one battle that's going on. The other battle that's going on is to try to expose the unbelievable Soviet-style police state tactics that were used by the Obama administration as the law enforcement senior level and the intelligence senior level were unleashed against Donald Trump, the Trump campaign, that is the Republican Party, in the lead up to the presidential election, and they're still there, and they're still doing it. New York Post pointed out, a Cambridge professor with deep ties to American and British intelligence has been outed as an agent who snooped on the Trump presidential campaign for the FBI. Now that is jaw-dropping. You've heard about it over the last 48, 72 hours, so I'm not breaking any news to you, but I wanted to address this anyway. That is jaw-dropping.
That the FBI was trying to figure out just what the Russians were up to.
No, the FBI was not trying to figure out what the Russians were up to, because they were working with the dossier from Christopher Steele that was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC that included collusion with the Russians. They weren't trying to figure out what the Russians were up to. Moreover, the President of the United States was not trying to figure out what the Russians were up to. His national security advisor, Susan Rice, told him in April 2016, told the cybersecurity team, I've said it 1,000 times at the White House, lay off, quote, stand down, and do not provide a memo to the President of the United States with options. Does that sound like an administration that's trying to get to the bottom of the Russian interference? Does that sound like the FBI was trying to get to the bottom of the Russian interference when they were actually going to hire Christopher Steele, the guy that actually worked with the Kremlin? Is this guy a joke, a complete fraud? Yes, he is. So now Trump keeps lying, you see, because he keeps using this word spy. And I, Trey Gowdy, I've never used the word spy in a criminal investigation. Nobody does, genius. It's a counterintelligence investigation. This informant, the FBI, this is what they do. They get a sense something's going on. The FBI will tell you they're investigating Russia. Well, I would say, then what the hell did you do about Russia during the intervention, during the last campaign? Almost nothing. All the focus was on Trump. All the leaks are on Trump. Did McCabe leak about Russia? No, he leaked about Trump. Did Comey leak about Russia? No, he leaked about Trump. How about Strzok and Page? What are they up to? Russia? No, Trump. We're talking about presidential campaigns. You got to treat them very carefully. FBI shouldn't be mucking around. The CIA shouldn't be mucking around. The White House shouldn't be mucking around in these campaigns. As I've said to you many, many times, the greater threat to this country wasn't the Russian interference in our election, which is unequivocally true. That's what they did. It was the federal government under the Obama administration's interference in our election that should cause you the greatest concern. And Mr. Gowdy's giving them aid and comfort, and the media, of course, are giving them cover because that's what they do.
When the FBI comes into contact with information about what a foreign government may be doing in our election cycle, I think they have an obligation to run it out.
Really? They have an obligation to run it out. So tell me exactly, what did the FBI do under Mr. Comey and McCabe, that is under Barack Milhouse, Benito Obama? What exactly did they do when they got information that the Russians were interfering in our campaign? Investigate the Trump campaign? What exactly did they do? How come Trey Gowdy doesn't tell us what did the Obama administration do to try and stop the Russians from interfering in our election? Nobody asks this of him, of Comey, of McCabe, of Brennan, of Clapper, of Susan Rice, of any of them. Certainly not Barack Obama. He's busy with Netflix and all the rest.
Was there a spy?
That is not a term I've ever used in the criminal justice system.
Well, the reason you would never use the term spy in the criminal justice system is because the word spy doesn't belong in the criminal justice system. The word informant belongs in the criminal justice system. Stay with me. I've tried to explain this over the course of the last 72 hours. The word spy applies to a counterintelligence investigation. What the FBI was conducting was a counterintelligence investigation. That's why they went to the FISA court. That's why they were unmasking people. None of that has to do with criminal justice. It has to do with an investigation of counterintelligence, which is not a criminal investigation. He should know this. He'll tell you that he's a former federal prosecutor. I looked it up. He actually is. He really was. And so the point is, you're not going to hear informant when you're doing a counterintelligence investigation at the FBI. It's spy.
So why won't he use the word spy? He's the incoming president of the United States. The FBI reports to him. Those agents work for him. How long were they going to keep this secret from the president? Turns out they kept it secret from the president until 2 weeks ago. He's been president of the United States almost a year and a half. If they had an informant investigating the Russians, why didn't they tell the sitting United States president? Because of everything I've said. They had a spy in the Trump campaign. Here's the key. Page, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? Stroke. No, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Now, how the Inspector General can conclude, again, based on leaked reports, that there is no political bias in the FBI's actions is really unbelievable to me. It's actually preposterous. What do you make of this? Those two lines. Well, if they're not politically motivated, what are they motivated by? Of course they are.
Congress has exercised its oversight authority to hold the executive branch accountable, conducting investigations, holding public hearings.
They are. They're holding investigations about all the activities that occurred in the Obama administration, where the Obama administration, through the FBI, through its spies from the FBI, working with a foreign former secret agent to develop a dossier, which was developed apparently with apparatchiks in the Kremlin, paid for by the Hillary campaign and the DNC, the application for a FISA warrant that was submitted to the FISA court, which lacked material information like the fact that it was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. We could go on and on and on. Mr. Comey was fired, and it turns out he was a leaker. The deputy FBI director was fired, and he's under criminal prosecution. The head of counterintelligence, Mr. Stroke, he was fired, and he may be under investigation as well, for all we know. Is that what he's talking about? Because those hearings have been taking place. The people obstructing them and undermining them have been the Democrats, his party. We must wait for the Mueller report. Wait for the Mueller report. All these senior leftist radicals in the Democrat Party, wait for the Mueller report. Pelosi, wait for the Mueller report. Hoyer, let's wait for the Mueller report. Why are they so confident about the Mueller report? Because I believe the Mueller report is going to be just as outrageously unconstitutional as I've been talking about over these years, or 20 months. Because all they have to do is put stuff in writing. They don't have to prove a damn thing. They don't have to go in front of a judge. They don't have to go in front of a jury. They don't have to make their case. There's no due process. There's no innocence until proven guilty. There's just a prosecutor and his team of Democrat donors making allegations. That's all it is. But they're so substantiated. But you and I both know that CNN is going to run with them. MSNBC will run with them. All the nightly news programs will run with it. All the commentators will run with it. They'll drag out their former federal prosecutors, their former judges, and all the rest to tell you how damning it all is, that there's collusion everywhere, everywhere. There's Russians under the rocks. They're in the closets. Oh, my goodness. They're everywhere, everywhere. Meanwhile, the administration that was in power at the time did damn near nothing to stop whatever it is they didn't stop.
The FBI, and this is not about the deep state, this is about the most serious counterintelligence people we have in the U.S. government saying, oh my God.
So notice there's no curiosity whatsoever about what the FBI was doing. No civil liberties concern whatsoever. He's a leftist. No civil liberties concern whatsoever. No discussion about even the possibility that senior officials at the FBI sought to undo the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency. That this is utterly and completely unprecedented. Nothing. It's Trump, you see. They had every reason, the FBI, to get into his campaign, to unlaunch a criminal investigation behind his back, to wonder if he is a secret spy for the Russians. They're even using the phrase now, whether he's the Manchurian candidate. Incredible. BuzzFeed's description of specific statements to the special counsel's office and characterization of documents and testimony obtained by this office regarding Michael Cohen's congressional testimony are not accurate. Keep it there. That was issued at around 7:25, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. I started raising the issue of a leak investigation and repeatedly raised it. The special counsel's office, based on the explanation I just gave you, right at the top of the hour. My show hits around 6:07 p.m. Eastern Time. Went from that all the way up to 7 o'clock. 25 to 30 minutes later, they issued this statement. Now, you're telling me, according to this Washington Post article, that they sat in the office mulling this over. The Washington Post article, I didn't want to read the whole thing to you, goes on. They started looking over their interview notes and looking in their files to try and determine if anybody told them this. Wait a minute. If you have a hot tamale in your hand, and you know, if the President of the United States told Michael Cohen to commit perjury in front of a congressional committee on a matter related to Russia, not Russian collusion, but you understand, that they would have to search their files and wonder if they conducted an interview in which that was said. They're working on a report right now. That would be the marquee. That would be the leading issue. They didn't spend all day searching their files and checking their interviews of witnesses. They sat on it. Eric Swalwell, also of California. More evidence of collusion. Well, where's your first piece of evidence? And this guy's thinking of running for president. I said to my neighbor, you see all these guys thinking of running for president? You know what he says to me? I'm thinking of running for president. Everybody's thinking of running for president. That's a joke. If Donald Trump directed his lawyer to lie, it was to conceal the underlying allegation from being exposed as true. Hashtag they colluded. Hashtag you're a moron. So I called for a leak investigation. It is a felony to leak investigative information. Mr. Comey knows that now. Mr. McCabe knows that now. Mr. Baker, all FBI guys know that now. They all know it now because they're all under investigation in one form or another for leaking. Weissman left his position as chief of the Criminal Fraud Division at the U.S. Department of Justice to help Mueller lead the FBI investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. His initials, AAW, appear on a document related to Paul Manafort's charges. So normally his initials are on it. Why? Because he's created the document. The copy of the document CNN had didn't have his initials on it, didn't have the so-called PACER identification on it. And how do Roger Stone's lawyers know? Remember what I said. Because CNN shared it with Roger Stone's lawyers to get a comment. And they're looking at it. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The one CNN sent us is different than the one that's on the website for the Justice Department and that they filed. The implication that an FBI official is leaking information to control CNN's coverage of the federal agency's activities could lead to another criminal investigation of its own people and be enough to ruin the current 2-year probe. Not if the Justice Department keeps sitting on its... Where's this guy Whitaker, the acting attorney general? Have they so cowed this guy? Where is he? It gets worse and worse. The more the liberal New York Times, the liberal Washington Post, the other liberal outlets put this information out as if they're really trying to destroy Trump. The more they put this information out, the more we are learning the depths to which senior FBI officials, senior Justice Department officials, and others tried to reverse the course of history and reverse the course of your vote. And it is a disastrous spectacle. And it is the greatest scandal in American history. Well, you can see all hell's breaking loose. The mainstream media pretty much is trying to keep a lid on it, as are the Democrats. But the fact of the matter is we have a huge problem with the top levels of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I say that with great trepidation. And I'll tell you why. I was chief of staff to an attorney general. I knew at least 2 former directors of the FBI. We worked incredibly well with the FBI over at the Justice Department. It would never even have occurred to us to interfere with their activities for or against. It never would have occurred to us to interfere with an election. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? All this talk about Russia interfering with our election, which Russia sought to do, and not just our election, but elections all over the world, but they failed. The FBI also sought to interfere with our election. Mr. Comey did.
Mr. McCabe did, the director, former, the current deputy, who will be out soon, as did their underlings, Mr. Stroke, Ms. Page, Raddick, Baker, and others whose names will go down in history infamously.
This
I try to use this format, as well as radio and my book writing, to make the case for Americanism, for liberty, for faith, for family, for property rights, for constitutionalism, and of course for a strong military. Doesn't mean we're radical interventionists, doesn't mean we're imperialists or colonialists. It means we're sensible. Now, China is on the move, Russia's on the move, Iran's on the move, North Korea's on the move, and the Democrats are undermining us.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, Levin TV.
We are expanding conservatism and expanding free speech here. Not only Levin TV on CRTV, we've got Crowder, we've got Wilkow, we've got Robertson, and as I say, we're expanding even more. It's really a wonderful, wonderful network for conservatives if you believe in Americanism. So spread the word. We're trying to build the alternative using modern technology and social media to all these other, behemoths out there that are trying to restrict us. So we are the antithesis of what they are. Your thoughts on Obama being in talks with Netflix to produce shows for them? Well, they're free to do whatever they want. I can tell you before we set up our model here at Levin TV, which obviously predated CRTV and our entire network, we spoke to Netflix, and they weren't interested at all. You know why? Because we're conservative. So we said, you know what? The hell with them, the hell with everybody else. We'll build our own platform, and that's exactly what we did. So I'm not surprised they embrace Obama. The people who run Netflix at the very top, who own the enterprise, or the major shareholders, are extremely liberal. They're Obama supporters. And this is what happens. Whether it's Gore, Obama, the Clintons, when they leave office, they become extremely rich. Not because they're smart, not because they're particularly good at anything, but because of stuff like this. People tell me, you're too hard on Mitch McConnell. I am not hard enough on Mitch McConnell. The spending is through the roof. The spending is through the roof. Trillions of dollars added to the national fiscal operating debt. I'm not even talking about unfunded liabilities, but not the United States military. So for the Obama agenda, more welfare, more handouts, more redistribution of wealth. We won $10 trillion in the can under the Obama administration, while our military was degraded. Well, don't worry about that. We work together. We got a lot of this stuff done here, We got the amendments done. We work together. We're bipartisan. What a jerk. What a disaster. These people need to be fought because it's the right thing to do. We are defending not just the President of the United States. We are defending the office of the presidency. We are defending the Constitution of the United States. We are defending the franchise, all of you and I, who voted in the last election for this president. We are fighting an effort, what I've called a silent coup that's been picked up by others in the media, because that's exactly what it is. The day after the election, I made the point on radio, these people will seek to impeach Trump or create a criminal scenario where they feel they can push him out of office. They've done it, and they've never stopped. They tried to take out Trump even before he was elected. We now know that with all the tawdry, incredible, outrageous activity that took place at the senior levels of the FBI, senior levels of our intelligence agencies, putting a spy in the opposition's campaign, unmasking individuals in that campaign, including General Flynn, all the tawdry activity that took place. Sometimes you just got to fight because it's the right thing to do. And the Republic matters, and the future for our children matter. This isn't just about the never-Trumpers who don't like Trump. It's not just about these clowns in the media who are pushing for his impeachment. It's not just about the Democrats regaining power so they can nationalize more things and control more things. It's about our liberty, too. And that's why we fight. It's about time we, the people, step into this. And we can step into this come November. We can get involved in this come November. We can come between the President of the United States and those who are promoting this coup d'etat, this silent coup. It is up to us to take this country back, and it's up to us to safeguard the vote that we cast in the last election. And if we don't turn out and the other side does, we're in for big trouble. When you look at the Ohio 12th Congressional District, which the Republican won by like 1,200 or 1,400 votes, that is a solidly Republican district. That was Kasich's former district, where you have 87% of the Democrats turning out and 40% of the Republicans turning out. It seems to me that is a disaster. And if that happens across the country, we're going to get slaughtered. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying we need to turn out and vote. And the main reason we need to turn out and vote is to protect our vote from the 2016 election, to protect our republic, to protect our Constitution, and try and prevent this coup d'etat, if you will.
I think the quote that might not be impeachable, put it this way, that obstruction of justice might not be an impeachable offense.
Well, I don't remember saying that, but if I said it, I said it. But no, I don't agree with that today.
All right, so he doesn't agree with himself. That's interesting. And why? We call it situational ethics, which are no ethics at all. Democrat, one standard. Republican, another standard. So Sass called me, because I had endorsed him some time before, to try and persuade me that I was wrong, that this was the way forward, that Corker was right. And it got a little heated, and I said to him, don't ever call me again. I'm not one of these media guys or talk radio guys who is so enamored with talking to a United States senator that I'll throw my principles out the window. I said, this is a disgrace. This is a disaster. And I hung up. Now he lectures everybody about the Constitution, does Sass. Now he's out there saying he's not sure he wants to be a Republican. Maybe he should be an independent. That the era of Trump is so distasteful and so many conservative sellouts there that he's just frustrated, and he's one of the last men standing, him and, of course, the late, great Jeff Flake.
Frankly, every election cycle, people talk a lot about draining the swamp, and then nobody ever does it. It's a campaign issue, and it's a governance issue. Nobody's making progress in the American people.
You know, I'll tell you how to drain the swamp, damn it. Slash the budget, slash the debt, slash the spending, slash the size of the federal government, close down some of these agencies, shut down some of these programs, give the people their liberty back, give the states their authority back. That's how you drain the swamp. What has he done about it? The guy's a backbencher. He hasn't done a damn thing. What have all these mouthpieces done? He's going to introduce legislation to force Trump to reveal his tax returns. That's how we're going to drain the swamp. I have another idea. How about supporting the Article 5 and the Convention of States movement? Will he do that? I have no idea. If he does, he hasn't said it very much. There you give power back to the people. You give power back to the states. We get our Constitution back and our republic back. What is this crap? This Mickey Mouse nonsense where they push out this phony reality. It's not our reality. It's their reality, which is stupid. This fool Jeff Flake. I learned the other day that his family was a pioneer family in Arizona. And they settled in a town called, you're not going to believe this, Snowflake. Snowflake. Named in part after his family, the Flake family and the Snow family. But Snowflake, isn't that perfect? The guy's in a snowflake. But he's also a narcissist, and he also has been dissembling about his opinion. And what has Flake done during his time in the Senate? Nothing. And he trashes the President of the United States, whereas he embraced Barack Obama. This is why the people of Arizona, with their good insight, were never planning to re-elect this man. He couldn't win no matter what. So he's taken this path, this path that is pro-media, pro-Democrat, pro-left-wing, while he pretends to be very balanced about all this stuff. Did you know that securing the border with physical barriers, a wall, what have you, is immoral? It's immoral. Now, this is according to Nancy Pelosi, who believes in partial birth abortion, abortion on demand. This is according to Nancy Pelosi, who doesn't believe the Ten Commandments should be in the public square, or the manger scene, or the menorah should be in the public square. Now they're going to lecture us on morality. But this is the danger. We conservatives have principles. We believe in our principles as a matter of philosophy. We also believe in faith, most of us, morality, most of us, and we believe our law should reflect that. The wall on the southern border has nothing to do with morality, good, bad, or indifferent. It has to do with doing the right thing to secure a nation. But the problem is for the left. Remember I said they put party first because it is the vessel through which they advance their progressive agenda? Progressivism is their religion. I want to thank our friend Kerry Katz, too. He and I met in my living room several years ago. We decided there was a great need for this kind of TV, digital TV, to try and get out in front of the technology and to try and make this a place where you and many of our fellow patriots would want to come, given what goes on in the media in this country, in the vast majority of platforms, TV, cable, network, and so forth. Others have tried this, digital TV, and almost all of them have failed. But we decided to do it a little bit differently. We wanted to crawl before we could walk, and we wanted to walk before we could run, and that's exactly what we're doing. I could not be prouder to be associated with my crew and staff, to be associated with Kerry Katz and the executive team and all the other shows and all the other people who work on those shows.
Well, it should be a no-brainer to provide medical care to a newborn baby who has survived the horror of an attempted abortion. It turns out that Democrats apparently have absolutely no soul on this issue. In fact, Democrats actually voted against a bill this week that would protect these children from being murdered outside the womb. I've got the names of the leading Democrats who refuse to protect the life of a child, and I'll give them to you coming up. And apparently, it's open season on conservatives. You wear a MAGA hat or otherwise even let people know you're conservative, and guess what? You might actually just get assaulted. So where is the media on this story? It seems like they had a whole lot to say when they thought Donald Trump was going to inspire Republicans to get violent. I'll take a look back down memory lane to remind you of the hypocrisy of the media on this issue. And finally, while Bernie Sanders is trying to sell people that socialism works in 2020, and that's why you should vote for him, the people of Venezuela are dying under an evil dictator in their socialist country. Plus, why is Bernie so afraid to release his tax returns? I've got all of that coming up. Ferguson Files starts right now. This week, Senate Democrats, including every single one of them that's running for president in 2020, actually voted against a bill that would require doctors to provide medical care to newborn babies who survive an abortion attempt. Now, this might be one of the most important commentaries that I've ever done, and I hope each of you will share this with your family and your friends to help expose exactly what the Democrats did this week. Now, Democrats voted against providing basic medical care to babies who have survived an abortion. 44 Democrats to be exact. Democrats painted the bill as, quote, government overreach, taking away a doctor's ability to use his best medical judgment. But that simply isn't true. The language of the bill said that doctors would have to, and I quote, exercise the same degree of professional skill, care, and diligence to preserve the life and health of the child as a reasonably diligent and conscientious healthcare practitioner would render to any other child born alive at the same gestational age. Let's be clear. There's nothing crazy here. Nothing requiring heroic measures that the doctor may think aren't in the baby's best interest, as Democrats claimed. Just the same thing that any other baby gets after they are born. But the Democrats still said no, and it's absolutely disgusting. Now, before the vote, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell shared some thoughts on the Senate floor. Take a look at this video from the Blaze.
This legislation is simple. It would simply require that medical professionals give the same standard care and medical treatment to newborn babies who've survived an attempted abortion as any other newborn baby would receive in any other circumstance. It isn't about new restrictions on abortion. It isn't about changing the options available to women. It's just about recognizing that a newborn baby is a newborn baby, period.
Now, as McConnell said, a newborn baby is a newborn baby. No new restrictions on abortion were in this bill. Nothing different about options for women either. Senator Ben Sasse was even more blunt. Take a look.
I want to ask each and every one of my colleagues whether or not we're okay with infanticide. This language is blunt. I recognize that, and it's too blunt for many people in this body. But frankly, that is what we're talking about here today. Infanticide is what the Abortion Survivors Born Alive, Abortion Survivors Protection Act is actually about. Are we a country that protects babies that are alive, born outside the womb?
Born, alive, and outside the womb. Still, Democrats said no to protecting these children. Now, after the vote, President Trump tweeted his disgust. Senate Democrats just voted against legislation to prevent the killing of newborn infant children. The Democrat position on abortion is now so extreme that they don't mind executing babies after birth. Now, the president continued in a second tweet where he said this will be remembered as one of the most shocking votes in the history of Congress. If there is one thing we should all agree on, it's protecting the lives of innocent babies. Now, President Trump is absolutely right. We should protect babies, especially babies outside the womb, who have already survived an attempted execution. What's even more shocking is that every damn Democrat running for the presidency is in favor of killing these babies after birth. Now, I think it's important to name every one of these candidates so the American people understand exactly who they are. They include Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Kristen Gillibrand, Amy Klobuchar, and Elizabeth Warren. They all voted to allow doctors to murder these children after they have been born. Now, these Democratic presidential candidates, even after seeing the backlash to the extremist abortion and infanticide bills in New York and Virginia last month, still decided to vote no. Every single person who has announced a run for the Democratic nomination voted no on this bill. So don't think for a second that these candidates didn't all coordinate this to make sure that the others were voting no on this bill. Having worked on presidential campaigns, I can assure you that all of them wanted to make sure that this issue never turned into an actual debate on an actual debate stage for the Democratic Party's nominee in the future. This is what candidates refer to as covering your political ass. Let's be clear. Democrats know what they're supporting, and they know what horrors they are defending. An undercover video came out last week showing a woman who is 23 weeks pregnant, finding out what happens when a baby is born alive. Now, before we show you this video from live action, I want to warn you that the description of what's happening to these living babies is going to be upsetting. But I also think it's important that we expose what the Democrats are actually in favor of.
What if it was like twitching or like something like that? Like
the solution will make it stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not going to be moving around in the jar.
Okay, the solution would make it like.
Yeah. That's the whole purpose of the solution.
Okay. So like if it looked like it was like breathing or something like that,
It'll automatically stop. It won't be able to.
It won't be okay. So I'm not even going to see it.
No.
So okay. So I mean, like if that
You're asleep, they take it out and it goes into our lab where they do the stuff with the jar and cleaning and all that.
Okay, so what is the solution? It's just like something like toxic or something?
Yeah.
Again, all of the Democrats know that this is what is happening to these newborn babies. These leaders of the Democratic Party, who actually want to be the president of the United States of America, understand that these children will be drowned alive in a toxic solution. These presidential candidates continue to allow the murder of children, all under the banner of their Democratic campaign slogans, that this is somehow a woman's health care issue or a woman's right to choose. Now, thank goodness the American people seem to care about these newborn babies. Over the last 60 days, the issue of infanticide has made people care even more. Just last month, a Marist poll found that Americans were more likely to identify as pro-choice than pro-life by a 15% margin. These numbers have significantly changed since the disgusting infanticide law in New York and the proposed Virginia bill came to light. Now the same poll finds, just a month later, that no longer do the majority of Americans actually identify as being pro-choice. It's now dead even at 47-47. Now, this is a massive swing of 15 points in just 1 month. After this vote, McConnell spoke again, as he was visibly shaken, but he had a promise to the American people. Just take a look.
In all honesty, the fact that this legislation even needed to be written is a sad reminder of the degree to which our society is at risk of losing some crucial moral bearings. And the fact that the United States Senate could not even vote to advance this bill is beyond dismaying. But I can say this fight isn't over. Republicans will not let this stunning extremism from our Democratic colleagues be the last word on this subject.
Mitch McConnell is absolutely right. The Democrats haven't heard the last of this. Every Democrat running for president has agreed that this is appropriate to kill a child that has been born, a child that is living and breathing outside of the womb. They have put themselves on the record as saying that these children do not deserve even basic medical care. A couple of these attacks that have happened over the last couple weeks in Massachusetts. There's a 23-year-old, Brighton Turner, who was having dinner, minding his own business at a Mexican restaurant. He was wearing a MAGA hat when he was attacked by Miss Santos, another woman in the restaurant. Now, Turner, thank goodness, recorded part of the exchange. I want you to take a look at it from Mass Live.
See this right here? This is the problem. Ignorant people like this. I'm just trying to sit here and eat a nice meal. Look at it. Yeah, you see this? You see this? People like that. That's the problem. Rosie's not doing too hot right now. I don't know what happened. She just tried to grab my hand in front of 4 officers. Not smart. There she is, getting cuffed. Have a nice night in the cell, Rosie.
Now, afterwards, Santos said that she was actually the victim here because she had been bullied earlier in her life. That's not a joke. That's her excuse. Now, that doesn't mean you can actually go out there and assault other people, especially right in front of a group of policemen that were in the same damn restaurant. Now, she's probably going to wish that she had kept her hands to herself because it turns out, you ready for this? She's an illegal immigrant, and now she's facing deportation back to Brazil. All because she couldn't let this man eat his dinner in peace wearing the hat that he wanted to wear. Now, let's take a look at attack number 2 from the past week. Oklahoma News 4 has footage of a high school student being antagonized by one of his peers. The reason? You guessed it. He was wearing a MAGA hat and a pro-Trump flag. And by the way, he was allowed to do that because it was part of a special school event. But that didn't stop the attack from happening. Take a look at this video.
Take it off. Take it off. A heated confrontation Monday morning at Edmond Santa Fe High School. A student takes exception with another's clothing, tipping the MAGA hat off his head and ripping away his Trump flag. The incident eventually involving law enforcement.
We have a school resource officer that's in the school at all times. He spoke with both students involved.
A municipal summons has been issued to the student that tipped the hat. He will be asked to appear before the city attorney with the Trump supporters' parents to decide if official assault charges will be filed. Edmond Schools issuing a statement saying that the student tipping the hat did violate school discipline policy and that they don't have a specific dress code policy against political apparel. Also saying the school district honors students' First Amendment rights, but must at the same time be vigilant in teaching and supporting students as they learn how best to respectfully express their opinions.
Of course, I was concerned about the safety for my son.
The Trump supporter's father worried about his son's freedom to express himself.
He wears his Trump shirts. He wears his other political view shirts. His ball caps. He wears this stuff all the time.
He says he is proud his son stood up to the aggression without getting violent. He also claims the student that tipped the hat wanted to make a statement.
He actually instructed his friend to start videotaping prior to contacting my son.
So let's move on to attack number 3 of the past week. A member of the conservative student group Turning Point USA was physically assaulted at UC Berkeley while recruiting conservative students to their organization. Here's the video from their website, and just a warning, there's some pretty foul language from the liberal attacker. Here it is.
Jesus Christ. What?
I'm with you. Yeah. Fuck. You won this fight. I'm with you. Put your hands on me again, motherfucker. Racist little difference, bitch. Fuck.
Oh, shit.
And if you think that other liberals might not be cheering this on, you're wrong. UV Panda, who works at Berkeley's data science education program, said in a since-deleted all-caps tweet, quote, "Oh my God, the MAGA people on UC Berkeley's campus yesterday got punched in the face by someone. This makes me feel emotionally so much better." Again, this is coming from an employee of this public university where your tax dollars are paying the salary of this individual. Now, my question to this employee is, do you seriously feel emotionally so much better because somebody was physically assaulted for exercising their right to free speech? Now, let's move on to attack number 4 from the past week. In New Jersey, an 81-year-old man, let me say that again, an 81-year-old man was assaulted in the middle of the day when he went to the grocery store wearing his MAGA hat. The police aren't releasing any of the details, but said the man was injured. So, where is the media? Where is their wall-to-wall coverage about these attacks? Where is the fear-mongering news reports that danger is lurking around every corner for every conservative that wears one of these hats because a liberal extremist might try to take you out? Well, they're nowhere to be found. So let me just refresh your memory on how the media did freak out when they thought that violence might come from the right. Take a look at this video Tucker Carlson put together on Fox News.
He's sending a message that this kind of violence is okay and that the media are an okay target for violence.
It is an incitement to violence. He is going to get somebody killed in the media. There's way too many unstable people out in the streets right now at this time of impassioned and heightened passions.
There are people out there who will, unhinged, irrational, who take these messages, internalize them, and may act on them.
That's right. Republicans aren't attacking anybody. It's the Democrats who are doing the assaulting. Remember, Democrats, including elected officials, are the ones advocating for these assaults on conservatives, including children. Check out this video montage from the Daily Caller.
Is fight in Congress, fight in the courts, fight in the streets, fight online, fight at the ballot box.
You get out and you create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Their idea is, look, nonviolence hasn't worked, and we are going to try to stop this.
President Walker, how do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
Other way. That's it right there, pulling up.
Because I'm throwing that piece of shit against the wall till it sticks.
Our democracy is under siege. People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator. We need a revolution at this point.
We will, as per Chief Jim Hopper, punch some people in the face.
Spokesperson, the mouthpiece for the President of the United States, to say you don't know me. In certain quarters in this nation, that starts a physical fight.
H. Look as his character is stabbed to death. And there's no mistaking the Trump connection.
So the next time a liberal says they want you as a conservative to be tolerant of their liberal ideas, you might want to remind them of how intolerant they actually are. And if you need the list, I just gave it to you. Bernie Sanders is doing awfully well in his quest for the 2020 presidential nomination for the Democratic Party, considering that he is a socialist, and in the history of the world, socialism has never worked ever. And I mean anywhere in the world. At a recent CNN town hall, one audience member asked him why we should trust socialism over capitalism. Take a look at this video from CNN. It's amazing.
So we have political right, freedom of religion, and all of that is enormously important. But you know what we don't have? We don't have guarantees regarding economic rights. And way back in 1944, in a little known, a little publicized State of the Union speech, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said something, and I'm paraphrasing him, but he said, you know, when we talk about human freedom and rights, we've got to understand that everybody needs a decent paying job, that people need health care, that people need education. And all over the world, these ideas are taking place. You go to countries in Scandinavia, of course health care is a right. Higher education is free. They have strong preschool programs. They make sure that their elderly folks can retire in dignity. These are not radical ideas. So what democratic socialism means to me is having in a civilized society the understanding that we can make sure that all of our people live in security and in dignity.
Now, don't worry, we didn't make an editing mistake. I did not cut out the part where Bernie Sanders actually compares capitalism and socialism, because he never actually addressed her question. And the reason is extremely obvious. Capitalism wins every damn time over socialism. And don't fall for this new word he added in there, democratic socialism. You can add the word democratic to socialism, Bernie, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still socialism. Now, in translation, voting for your oppressor doesn't mean you're not going to be oppressed. Now, Sanders talked about how everyone is going to be taken care of. Everyone is going to have everything they need, and the government will take care of every citizen cradle to grave. So let's think about what is happening at this very moment right now in the socialist country of Venezuela. Last month, 2 weeks after the dictator Maduro was sworn in for his second term, Juan Guaido, the opposition leader, declared himself president of the country. Now, Maduro will not allow any humanitarian aid into the country right now. No food for his people, nothing at all. Now, why is that so incredibly important? Because Venezuela, a country that is incredibly rich in natural resources, a country that should be wealthy beyond belief, well, unfortunately, it has a population that right now is literally starving. And human rights groups are reporting that food and water is being blocked by the socialist dictator Maduro, all in a move to keep control by having a physically weak population that cannot physically stand up to him. Now, this is actual socialism. This is what socialism does. You literally have people that are eating out of garbage cans. Now, there's a massive shortage of day-to-day necessities like milk, diapers, and even toilet paper. Electric power is even being rationed in the country right now. And they have the Bernie Sanders dream of health care for everyone in Venezuela. Well, guess what? There's overcrowding. There's no medicine. And doctors don't have the tools they need to save people's lives from basic health risks. In translation, something like a simple cut or the flu can kill you in Venezuela. Human rights groups are now reporting that newborns and the elderly are dying unattended in the hospitals. They're too weak for doctors, they say, to even try to save them. And medicine, they say, can't be wasted because they're running out of it. Now let's move to inflation. It's become so extreme that Venezuelan money is now actually worth less than the fictional money used in the online game world of Warcraft. Now let me remind you of who Bernie Sanders actually is, the guy that's in favor of this lifestyle. He's the classic socialist politician who is do as I say, not as I do. He's actually a lot like Maduro himself. After all, they both have multiple houses. They both have extreme personal wealth that they've gained through government control. We don't know exactly how much money Bernie, or Maduro for that matter, has. In fact, Bernie won't release his tax returns to the American people. At the same town hall, CNN's Wolf Blitzer asked him, "Why won't you show us your tax returns? Take a look."
Well, you know, the delay is not, it'll bore, our tax returns will bore you to death. It's simply nothing special about them. It just was a mechanical issue. We don't have accountants in the home. My wife does most of it, and we will get that stuff out.
So when do you think we'll be able to see your tax returns?
Sooner than later.
Well, what does that mean?
Soon.
Soon?
Yes.
Look, I don't know if Bernie is going to be the wealthiest candidate running in this 2020 election, but I do know that any socialist worth his salt shouldn't own multiple homes or cars for that matter. If you look at what socialism stands for, it's unnecessary to have any belongings at all that are above the average human needs. I'm just waiting for somebody in the media to ask why he hasn't redistributed some of his homes or cars, or maybe some of the millions of dollars in his bank account that he's got from being in our government. I'll leave it there. That's it for the Ferguson File today, and I'll see you back here real soon on Blaze TV. Women who are married to Border Patrol agents actually decided to write a letter to Nancy Pelosi, calling her out for ignoring the crisis at the southern border. Meanwhile, one Democratic senator is actually willing to listen to Border Patrol agents and vote for barrier funding. I'll tell you who it is coming up. And as Governor Cuomo says that pro-lifers are no longer welcome in New York, Catholics are calling for his excommunication. The real question is, will the Catholic Church actually respond by enforcing their own teachings? We'll take a look at this story coming up in a few. And the kids at Covington Catholic were lied about and dragged through the mud by many in the media. And now they're considering taking legal action. Meanwhile, people are still losing their minds when they see a Make America Great Again hat claiming that it, quote, triggers them. The Ferguson File starts right now. The shutdown made it clear that Democrats care more about beating Donald Trump than they care about national security. We aren't the only ones that noticed. A group of women married to Border Patrol agents wrote a letter to Nancy Pelosi expressing their extreme frustration and inviting her to the border to see the situation for herself. Now, two of the women visited Fox and Friends to discuss their letter, genuinely asking Nancy Pelosi to come take a look and help. Take a listen to what they had to say.
In a letter to Pelosi, they wrote, "We, the wives of the Rio Grande Valley Border Patrol, would like to cordially invite you to come visit McAllen, Texas, as President Trump did. We would like to show you around. You don't need to bring any security detail. Our husbands, significant others, are actually very good at their jobs, thank goodness. We'd also appreciate if you'd stop pretending that you care about federal workers. If you did, you would care for their safety, not just their paychecks. We can hold out a while longer if it means our husbands and communities are safer." Joining us now, Border Patrol wife who wrote that letter, Jill Demansky, and fellow Border Patrol wife and a friend of Jill's, Renee Perez. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Jill, why did you write that letter? What brought you to the point where you were so frustrated you wanted to get your message out?
I just felt that it was really important that our leaders come here and see what's happening firsthand. It's important for them to meet with the people that are here on a daily basis, that are witnessing it and the effects that it has on our country. And we want them to come here and make an informed decision and to see what's really going on.
Now, these wives clearly don't have an agenda, except for the fact that they want Nancy Pelosi to actually know what's really going on at the border. That doesn't seem like a lot to ask. Maybe that's why a new NBC Wall Street Journal poll found that Nancy Pelosi is the least popular politician in America. She came in below Mitch McConnell and well below Donald Trump, even after the media have trashed both those people every day. Literally, we're talking about a huge margin between Pelosi's likability and Donald Trump. In fact, negative perceptions about her shot up during the government shutdown where she claimed that she was winning. Now, the American people know that she doesn't care about them or their worries. Just look at these wives. Fortunately, not all Democrats are putting themselves first and their hatred towards Donald Trump as their main political goal. Senator Maggie Hassan told CNN that she actually supports, as a Democrat, funding for border security and fencing. Take a look.
So you would, if it includes other things like technology that you've talked about, agree to some amount of funding for a border barrier. How much?
Well, so what I think is important over the next several weeks is that we listen to the people on the front lines. I was down on the border last May, and what the CBP told me was they needed more agents, we need more immigration judges, we need better technology, especially at our ports of entry, and in some places we need to improve fencing, repair fencing, or perhaps put in some new fencing. You know, what we need to be doing is focus on what the experts are telling us they need, and I think that there is a lot of common ground around that.
Honestly, it's nice to see that at least some Democrats are willing to listen to Border Patrol agents and make our country safer. More Democrats should be willing to do the right thing and not just take orders from Nancy Pelosi on hating Trump. And with another government shutdown less than 3 weeks away, I wonder how many Democrats will actually pay attention to the polling data and realize that doing the right thing, advocating for border security, may actually pay off for them come Election Day. At this point, we'll have to wait and see, but hopefully Senator Hassan has started a new trend that will help out the entire nation. After the murderous bill that was passed in New York last week, which would allow abortions up until the moment of birth, Catholic Governor Andrew Cuomo has continued to somehow celebrate this as a major success for his constituents. Now, this isn't the first time that he has shared his extreme views on abortion. In 2014, he went so far as to say that the people who don't support abortion were actually no longer welcome in New York. He even decided to call conservatives, quote, extreme conservatives, and basically said, get out, saying they have no place in the state of New York because that's not who New Yorkers are. All right, I'll take that as a compliment. If that's who New Yorkers are, I don't want to be anywhere close to his definition of a New Yorker. Now, this new law basically turns abortion into a recreational medical sport. And an OBGYN discussed the new law and its practicality on Fox News. Take a look.
But our next guest, an OBGYN who says he delivered more than 2,500 babies, tweeted, there's not a single fetal or maternal condition that requires a third trimester abortion, not one. That Dr. Omar Hamada, and former Army surgeon, joins us now to explain. So, sir, tell us what you meant by that.
Hey, Katie. Basically, in the third trimester of pregnancy, there is not a single condition that requires an abortion. There's not a single condition that requires that we kill the baby before delivery. There are several things in third trimester pregnancy that require that we deliver the mother, and that is a fact, but there's not a single thing that actually requires us to kill the child.
So this New York abortion law, which allows abortion up to the day before birth, essentially then is a recreational abortion bill.
Now, the worst part is that Catholic Governor Cuomo doesn't seem to care that he literally just legalized the murdering of children who can't defend themselves, but also the hypocrisy here. This is the same governor that demanded that they end capital punishment for all adults in New York. Now, thank goodness some Catholics are calling for Cuomo to be excommunicated from the church. Now, let me be clear. I am not advocating for this out of retaliation or to hurt the governor personally. What I'm in favor of is the Catholic Church actually standing up for what they believe in, which is clear, that abortion is murder and a sin. Now, when you have a prominent member of your church who isn't just advocating for murder, but is actually making it legal, you must respond or the church and its teachings have become basically worthless. The Bishop of Albany talked about this on Fox and Friends. Just take a look.
I can certainly understand the outrage and the anger, and I and many bishops have been asked to consider that sanction. As you know, Governor Cuomo is not a resident of my diocese, so I would not have what we call jurisdiction. I'm not his county executive, so to speak, but that's a technical question. Excommunication is a last resort. And as the governor continues to distance himself from our communion, it may unfortunately result in that. My hope is that since his faith is important to him, he will reconsider the importance of maintaining that communion and not continue to distance himself.
Couple things here. One, I hope the Catholic Church actually has the guts to do the right thing, and this should have been done a long time ago. It's time for the church to stand up for their own teachings and not be afraid to alienate the governor of the state, who clearly has no problem separating himself from the Catholic Church and its teachings. He's also using the Catholic Church because every time he runs for office, he runs around screaming, I'm Catholic, appealing to Catholics, trying to get them to vote for him on Election Day. So the Catholic Church, you can't control what the governor does or says. The one thing you can control is actually standing up for what you believe in. We'll be watching, and we'll see if you have the guts to actually do it. Remember those kids that just went to Washington to stand up for unborn children, happened to buy a red hat that said, Make America Great Again, and then they were slandered by the media? Well, those MAGA kids were unfairly attacked. They were called racist, elitist, basically all the worst things that you could call a person. And the worst part is the media allowed all of this slander to be reported as fact. Now, the kids are looking to fight back, and I love it. An attorney for the kids shared a list of, well, potential people they may be going after. Reza Aslan, the guy who said that Nick Sandman, the kid wearing that hat, had a, quote, punchable face, he's on the list. Matthew Dowd of ABC News said they were racist even after seeing the entire video. He's on the lawyers list. I love it. And the New York Daily News, who reported that the kids were in blackface back in the day when they were dressed for a blackout game. He's also made the list. Everyone on the list, they gave a fair opportunity to make things right. They gave them 48 hours to delete or retract their statements. Guess what happened? Not one of these damn outlets chose to do it. The media, showing their arrogance in the face of getting a story clearly wrong, proved once again that they are not unbiased as they claim. If they don't like you or what you stand for, they will do everything in their power to destroy your life. And even when they're caught red-handed lying, they still say, well, we got a big old you-know-what for you. That middle finger. You get my point. Now, this lawyer should absolutely sue every single one of them who assaulted these kids with their headlines and bylines filled with lies. Remember, the real reason these kids were attacked was because of their red hats. And people are still running around actually melting down when they see one of these hats, and they're saying it's all started under Trump and then these kids. And, well, just take a look at this video. It's truly amazing.
Because it incites fear in all those around us. Every person is afraid of that hat. I'm afraid of that hat. Keep America great. For so many people, that's racism.
Yeah, but that's because of the mainstream media's narrative that's painted Donald Trump as a racist. I don't agree with the narrative. I'm out here to try to share that that narrative is skewed.
As a human being, you should pay attention to fear and not logic.
Wait, you said pay attention to fear and not logic?
Yes.
I should have paid attention to emotions and not facts?
Yes.
Why would I pay attention to emotions when
that are real in this world?
Facts are facts.
Facts are facts. No, emotions are real. Emotions is one removed from spirit. I find that it is hard to trust others.
You shouldn't trust the mainstream media. You should start listening and looking into
things. What do you suggest? That is saying don't trust knowledge, operate in darkness.
No, go look up facts. Go look up actual statistics and facts. Look up Pew Research.
Emotion is real.
But emotions change, don't they?
What in the hell is this crazy woman actually talking about? She just said emotions are facts. No, they're not facts. I don't care how much you cry, yell, scream, rant, or rave. This is complete insanity of the left. After what these kids were put through, I hope people start fighting back. And I hope they get lawyers, and I hope they win. People need to start dealing in reality. And when the media becomes a weapon of the lies, of these lies to attack innocent kids, lawyers need to come in and put the smackdown on these so-called journalists. These journalists are a threat to anyone's normal life. They're a threat to private citizens. They were a threat to these kids' futures. And for the rest of their life, these kids are going to have to explain what really happened that day. And there's still going to be people that are going to say, I don't want to work with these kids. I don't want to hire them. I don't want them on my sports team. I don't want them at my university. All because the media slandered them. I'll leave it right there. That's it for the Ferguson File, and I'll see you back here real soon on Blaze TV.
There's a firestorm currently raging in Washington over the Trump administration's zero-tolerance immigration policy that has resulted in children being temporarily separated from their parents at the border.
I'm sure any parent here, mother or father, knows that this is barbaric. This is not what America is, but this is the policy of the Trump administration.
It's a disgrace, it's shameful, and it's un-American.
President Trump, cease and desist, because you are moving the arc of justice to the heap of despair and the trash heap of injustice.
Okay, everyone, it's time to take a deep breath, stop all the hyperbole, and look at the facts here. Here's how President Trump responded to the outspoken and often hyperbolic criticism of his administration's new immigration policy.
The Democrats would sit down instead of obstructing. We could have something done very quickly. Good for the children, good for the country, good for the world. What's happening is so sad, and it can be taken care of quickly, beautifully, and we'll have safety.
You know, he's right, folks. This whole situation is sad. It's awful to see, but it's very fixable. Look, I'd like to believe that nobody wants to see kids separated from their parents, but we are a nation of laws. It's Congress's job to pass those laws. It's the executive branch's job to faithfully execute those laws. And right now, the immigration laws that we have are terrible. Here's the reality. What we're actually seeing now is the result of years of bad policy and congressional incompetence that's all come home to roost at once, and we could fix it in a day. Now, there are only 3 conditions that should lead to a family being separated at the border. Either the government finds that an adult is lying about being the child's parent, or the adult is a threat to the child's well-being, or the adult is put into criminal proceedings for illegally crossing the border. And right about here is where people forget that illegally crossing the border is illegal, and it's a crime. And the way you deter crimes is by eliminating loopholes and prosecuting the people who commit them. You know, even natural-born citizens are not spared being separated from their families when they are held without bail. This is very simple. But criminal proceedings for border crossings are usually pretty quick. According to Rich Lowry over at National Review, if a party pleads guilty to the crime of crossing the border illegally, they're usually sentenced to time served, reunited with their kids, and then sent home all on the same day. Now, if an adult in that situation claims asylum in the United States, that's where things get a lot more complicated. It's because due to a legal agreement struck in 1997 by Bill Clinton called the Flores Consent Decree, the federal government can only hold children for 20 days. That means that a family's asylum process normally takes longer than the government is allowed to hold the kids. So what do you do then? Well, the Obama administration used this as an excuse to turn border crossers free so long as they were part of a family unit. All a migrant had to do was show up with the child, say the magic words, and they'd be released in the U.S. interior where they could skip out on their hearings and then disappear into the wind. And that's what we call catch and release. And that became a major loophole that illegals used to get into the United States. Now, naturally, this creates other problems, not least of which was a surge in kidnappings of children near the border by people who wanted to pose as families so they could exploit our immigration systems and claim asylum. Look, folks, when people who don't want to obey the law know that there's a loophole, they tend to jump through that loophole. And the effects that can have on children are devastating. It's all pretty simple. Now, since the Trump administration's policy ended the catch and release approach for adults, the Flores Decree then forces the government to resettle the children with legal guardians. Now, these are usually a family member who is themselves usually an illegal immigrant, and that creates even more accountability problems. But they have to do that within 30 days until the whole thing can be worked out in court. Now, the thing to remember here is that the kids aren't just being turned out onto the street or kicked back to their country of origin alone by themselves or kept indefinitely in a cage. That doesn't mean it's still not a bad situation, but it's not what the outrage machine wants you to believe either. But that does bring us to the next problem. In addition to the loopholes, a reason that we had a catch and release problem in the first place is that our immigration enforcement agencies don't have the resources they need to hold and process everyone by the book. So even without Clinton's Flores decree, we simply don't have enough family detention spaces to keep everyone together at the moment. Now, the way to fix all of this is through Congress. Yeah, our Congress. I know. Right now, the House is poised to vote on 2 bills to tackle our border crisis. While one is favored by conservatives and the other is meant to appease more open borders Republicans, they both have more funding for enforcement, and they have the same language on detaining families together. Here's what they say. In no circumstances shall an alien minor who is not an unaccompanied alien child be released by the Secretary of Homeland Security other than to a parent or legal guardian. On their face, it appears both bills would effectively eliminate the Flores limitation and then allow the government to keep families claiming asylum together. Now, I reached out to my sources on the Hill, and I got some mixed responses on how exactly this would look at the border. And to stay up to date on that, sign up for my free daily newsletter. But if the open borders politicians in Congress can stop grandstanding for long enough to deal with the terrible policies at the root of this problem, we can stop fighting over all this. Then, if you are legitimately fleeing persecution under U.S. law, you simply go to one of our 328 ports of entry with your family and claim asylum there, just like in the movies. You will not be breaking the law, and as a result, you will not be prosecuted for doing so. And that means your family will get to stay together, so long as you're not lying to government officials or an outright threat to your kids. If you are not an asylum seeker, then don't lie to us and come here the legal way. The system's already severely backlogged, and there are people fleeing all sorts of horrific persecution all over the world that shouldn't have to suffer more longer because of you. Who reject the talk of defunding the Mueller probe because they're either too afraid of what the media might say about them to agree with this, or they're just big Well, we've got the latest price tag on special counsel Bob Mueller's anti-Trump witch hunt, and boy, is it a doozy. Now, let's just take a quick look at where all of our money is going, shall we? According to a recent spending report from the Department of Justice, the Mueller team has managed to burn through a total of $10 million in the last 6 months. Now, that includes over $2.7 million in salaries, almost $1 million in rent and utility costs, and over $500,000 in travel expenses. And on top of that, the Department of Justice spent another $5.5 million related to the investigation. And since we don't have a line-by-line breakdown of those costs, we have no way of knowing from this report exactly how the feds used more than half of the money that this boondoggle has cost us over the past 6 months. And that brings the overall cost to a whopping $17 million for the entire year that Mueller and his people have spent looking for something to prove that President Trump colluded with the Russian government during the 2016 presidential election. Or that he obstructed justice when he fired Comey, which is constitutionally impossible. Or whatever they've decided to look into this week. Who can keep up? President Trump used the news to once again call out the Mueller team on Twitter, saying that there's no collusion except by the Democrats. But to give credit where credit is due, let's just take a quick look at all the evidence that Mueller and his team have turned up against President Trump this past year. And what's that? Yeah, we got nothing. Wait, here's something.
Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election.
No, sorry, that was actually the DOJ's announcement of the indictment of 13 Russian nationals back in February. No, what we actually have is a year's worth of headlines from legacy media outlets that still haven't managed to lose hope that this fishing expedition will eventually turn up something strong enough to oust President Trump from the Oval Office. And we've also flushed 17 million taxpayer dollars down the drain. You know, that's an amount of money that most Americans will never see in their lifetime. And for what? A frivolous deep state witch hunt. And anybody who scoffs at $17 million being just another drop in the government bucket, well, that just might say more about their complacency with government waste than it does about the absurdity of this witch hunt. But that brings us all to the next big question here. Why in the world is a Republican Congress still funding this? You know, Mueller's team has had an entire year to come up with hard evidence to show for their efforts. And now they've burned through the annual salaries of 850 enlisted servicemen in that time frame. Yes, we did the math. They've got nothing. A handful of conservatives on the Hill have called to put time limits on Mueller's funding, and others have called for more oversight of the probe, and some have actually had the courage to call to close down this Russian circus altogether. But in addition to the opposition from Democrat conspiracy theorists and impeachment mongers, these calls have also had to contend with the establishment Republicans who reject the talk of defunding the Mueller probe because they're either too afraid of what the media might say about them to agree with this, or they're just big fans of what Mueller's doing in the first place. And here's the bottom line. There's no clear end in sight for the length, the scope, or the price tag of this investigation. And with over $20 trillion in national debt, the American people are paying for a multi-million-dollar coup attempt that does nothing but prop up the left's hopes of getting rid of a duly elected president that they just don't like. And meanwhile, you, the American taxpayer, are currently represented by a GOP-controlled Congress that campaigned on upholding the Constitution and practicing fiscal responsibility. Now, the only question is whether or not the leaders of that Congress are actually willing to put their money where their mouth is. Well, folks, the lefty mob is eating its own. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey is now coming under fire from many of his own users on his own platform for the unforgivable sin of eating Chick-fil-A during Gay Pride Month, probably more aptly referred to as Rainbow Ramadan at this point. Here to talk with me about the implications of what this actually means is CRTV's own Steve Days. Steve, it's good to have you on my show for once instead of me being on yours.
It's good to be here, Nate. And I kind of coined the phrase Rainbow Jihad. I wish I would have come up with Rainbow Ramadan.
Hey, it's a collaborative effort here, man. You know, like when you realize
there is wisdom in a multitude of counsel.
Exactly. Iron sharpens iron. But let's face it, the story that we've seen here so far is that, oh, this is a big deal because he ate there during Gay Pride Month, which is the section of the year that's all sectioned off for rainbows, whatever. But let's face it, if he ate this on July 1st, if he had Chick-fil-A and tweeted about it on, September 28th, he would have faced the same firestorm because, let's face it, the leftist mob, they hate Chick-fil-A. They have never forgiven them. Even when they broke their policy of not working on Sunday to help people after the Pulse nightclub shooting at a gay nightclub in Orlando, there is no good that these people can do that is ever forgivable, and eating there is unforgivable.
One of the things I talk about a lot is every time you turn on a Tolerance Boulevard, it's a one-way street.
Yeah.
The very same people that drive around with those coexist bumper stickers have no interest in coexisting with much of the country. And I think this is something that's important for conservatives to understand, is that there's been a generational shift on the left. There's not really too many liberals anymore. In fact, a lot of liberals ended up coming to the Republican Party because the Democrats went too far left. Yesterday's liberals are now today's leftists. And the big difference is the old liberals wanted government to permit you to do things that God said was dumb or immoral. Today's leftists want government to make you do those things. They want government to compel you to do those things. And if you will not do them, then you will be made to care. There is no room for accommodation whatsoever.
Or at least if not make you, at least make you celebrate things that are either dumb or immoral or just opposed to that. You have to be made to care. Not even just made to care. I remember when Erickson coined that with his book back in 2016. But we're beyond made to care at this point. We are made to celebrate. And that's the frustrating point. And here's the thing. What does it say about a movement when they're willing to just digitally just hang a guy who fundamentally agrees with them on everything but makes this one mistake of tweeting about the fact that he went to a chicken joint whose owner once gave money and did some things that they, a few years ago and then backtracked on it immediately afterwards?
I think the same weekend that this happened, the Washington Post, which is, there's not really many politically influential newspapers, right or left in America. They're one of the few. And they sort of consider themselves the paragon of the American left.
Because democracy dies in darkness, as we know.
When they run a column with the headline, "Why Can't We Hate Men?" And I clicked on it thinking, please tell me I fell for clickbait, right? Please tell me this is not really what they're arguing. And when you click on it, they're arguing this.
Yeah.
And when they're running what Mother Jones used to run for 9 people 4 or 5 years ago, when they're running that now, Nate, at the Washington Post, the same weekend as what happens with Twitter Jack. There's a clear indication here that there is an element of the American left that is not interested in sharing a country with people of diverse thought or traditional beliefs, and they will drive you out if you will not comply.
And the thing that got me is I saw the column you're talking about, and I saw the backlash on my feed and amongst a lot of my friends there. You know, people made the very clear argument there, you know, could you say this about any other people group?
Right.
Could you say, is it okay to hate women? Is it okay to hate gays? Is it okay to hate Muslims? Is it okay to hate Mexicans? You couldn't say that. But we're getting to the point where the left is so increasingly woke, they no longer care about that argument. They know that they're past their own
You're right.
50.
Self-awareness is gone. It's funny. They don't feel like they have to hide anymore.
No.
We don't hear phrases like, how's my gay marriage going to impact your marriage?
No.
All the old talking points are gone. What's happened is Little Red Riding Hood showed up at the cottage, and the wolf didn't come out dressed like grandma. The wolf comes out and says, hey, what do you think about my slamming fangs and my sharp claws?
Exactly.
The wolf is wide out in the open now. And I think what we have to figure out on the right is, and I think this is where, I don't say this often, I think this is where we can take a cue from Donald Trump, is that there's this notion that Trump got 6.5 million of people that voted for Obama in 2012 to vote for him in 2016 over manufacturing and coal.
Right.
There's rarely very few manufacturing and coal jobs left in America, and it's not 6.5 million people.
Nope.
He really did it because he was willing to touch these cultural flashpoint issues that 90% of the Republicans, just a stone's throw from where we're doing this, don't want to go anywhere near.
They're terrified.
And probably even disagree with us on if we gave him some sodium pentothal.
Yeah.
And I think what Trump realized is that the voter the Republican consultant has targeted most of my career. This